The spice. I require the spice. The spice melange. The spice has changed our way of life. We require the spice for our new abilities. I must find the spice melange. Perhaps this one can supply me with that I need. I must use my ways of the voice to persuade such an individual. Excuse me, do you happen to have any of that Phazon left?
Nope, we are all out of Phazon. You could thank that woman over there for it. She took the last bit and decided to blow it up.
Oh, well, thanks. I must continue to find the spice melange. Ever since I've had to start working from home because of, the whole situation with the Phazon corruption spreading around the world, I have been looking for some different activities to help me pass the time whenever I'm free. So it's not just me raiding non-stop on Final Fantasy or playing other video games. I decided to do some extra bit of indoor exercise with stuff like Ring Fit Adventure, started an endeavor to learn another language, retook my hobby for building model kits, made some time for meditation, started learning more about the birds in my neighborhood, and went back to develop some personal projects that I hope to share with you guys sometime in the near future. From all the different activities I have taken up, the one I've been enjoying the most in particular is reading books again. It's something I used to do a lot during my morning commutes back in the days when I was studying abroad, that I quickly got back into and enjoy reading a little bit of every genre, as long as it's fiction, of course. When it comes to purchasing new books, I tend to do it in bulks, just in case either the story is not my type, I feel like taking a break, or want to take a step back from dwelling deeper into that existential rabbit hole of a pre-existing franchise that I can't simply put down. Thanks for the tears, Yoko Taro. But one day, my brother came over to me and suggested a book he was going to start reading himself, so we could discuss it together like a mini book club, by author Frank Herbert, released back in 1965. That supposedly is one of the most influential pieces of media to the science fiction genre as a whole, simply titled Dune. The story of a far distant future where young Paul Atreides finds himself trying to survive in the galaxy's most inhospitable planet, Arrakis, during a power struggle between different noble houses of an empire who are trying to secure control over its unique resource, simply referred to as the spice or melange. And what else is there for me to say than what you might be expecting? I quickly got hooked with the story's world and narrative that I finished this chunky, almost 600-page long book in a matter of weeks. Something I haven't done in a long time since I'm a bit of a slow reader myself. What helped is that I am a sucker for worlds with a lot of lore and history. And well, Dune is filled to the brim with it. From the war against robots that banned their constructions, to the psychic-like witches of the Bene Gesserit, the human supercomputers known as Mentats, space pilots that can see into the future to ensure their travels in hyperspace, to the intriguing biology of the great worms that roam on Arrakis. But maybe one of the main things that kept me reading Dune was seeing the plenty of concepts and story elements that inspired a lot of ideas in other franchises that I like. Specifically in how some of the aspects from the Metroid series echo certain elements to those from the book. But first, I want to clarify that the similarities between these two stories are merely coincidental, since we don't have any solid proof that the dev team of the Metroid games used Dune as a source of reference. But seeing how impactful the book has been to the sci-fi genre, it could have perhaps in some way inspired the game series indirectly. The first thing that came to mind was how the story of Samus, as seen in the official Metroid manga, resembles that of the protagonist Paul Atreides, in his rise to become the Fremen known as Muad'Dib. As you are probably somewhat familiar with, Samus was originally from the space colony K2L, who lost her parents by the hands of the space pirates and was forced to escape to Sebes in order to survive. Which is similar to how Paul was originally from planet Caladan and moves to Arrakis when his father, the Duke Leto, is giving assigned rule to the planet, and was later taken down by the members of House Harkonnen, which forced Paul to flee into the desert in order to survive their attack. And as a young Atreides struggled in the harsh environments of the planet, he eventually managed to join the ranks of the native Fremen, not only to survive but also take down the Harkonnen who betrayed their peace treaty. Which is similar to how Samus is trained to become another member of the Chozo, but also given their DNA so she could survive Sevis's harsh environment. And after completing her training, sets to stop Mother Brain, who betrayed her adoptive kin by joining with the pirates who led the attack on K2L. Another similarity is that the space pirates raided the colony to take control of their export of afluorolite, which is said to be a precious fuel source in the Metroid universe, which reflects to how House Harkonnen attacked the Atreides to gain control of the spice export on Arrakis, which again is the most precious substance in the universe of Dune. But the coincidences don't stop there, because other of Dune's elements are also used in some way on the more recent games in the series, such as Metroid Prime. On Arrakis, the Fremen have a legend of a messiah who will come from another world and help liberate their people from the reigns of the Padishah Empire, which ultimately becomes real in the form of Paul after joining the group under the name of Muad'Dib. This is reflected in Metroid Prime with how the Choso of Talon 4 foretold the coming of the Leviathan seed and that Samus would be the one who could save the planet from its Phazon corruption. It's also worth pointing out that the Phazon in the Metroid games also plays a similar role to that of the spice in Dune. It's a highly sought after resource that can grant people with special abilities, which is also highly addictive and potentially dangerous, only grows on one hostile planet in the entire galaxy, and wars are waged over its control and supply. Not only that, but those who have a diet with high intake of the spice have their eyes changed to a color that the book calls blue within blue, which also signals an addiction to the substance. And if you know where this is going, this is a similar visual cue used to represent those who have been corrupted by the Phazon in Metroid Prime 3. Another fun coincidence is that the Choso on Talon 4 referred to the Metroid Prime, the source of Phazon inside the Impact Crater, as the Worm, which is similar to how the giant sandworms on Dune are responsible for the creation of the precious melange. It also goes without saying that the concept for the Guardians of the Dark Agon Waste Temple on Morbus shares a couple of visual similarities with the Great Sandworms, especially with how they're said to be the protectors of the spice, in the same way the boss guards the stolen light of Aether, and how they can sense surface-level creatures to attack. There are also Dune's famous still suits, which are full body suits that are worn by the Fremen to maintain their moisture so they can navigate through the harsh deserts of Arrakis, which, in other words, protects them from extreme heat, just like the Varia suit protects Samus from the same elements in the game series. Also, the Choso that migrated to Talon 4 abandoned their technological ways in order to return to their spiritual side, which in a way helped them gain their prescient abilities and even move beyond the mortal realm. This in a way reflects certain aspects of Dune's universe, especially with how the people return to the more organic and spiritual side of things after banning the creation of robots or any machine capable of something similar to human thought, the mysticism with the Sisterhood of the Bene Gesserit and their superhuman abilities, and the way their higher-ups, the Reverend Mothers, can have soul-searching capabilities. And lastly, the more technological-oriented Choso also resemble the Tleilaxu, who create biological products through genetic manipulation. Among them, the Metats, biological supercomputers which some consider to be twisted, just like an enigmatic villain from the Metroid franchise. But once again, like I mentioned, these are merely coincidences I noticed when reading the book that I can remember from the top of my head while writing the script. And if I were to go back to it, I could probably find some more similarities, not only with the first volume, but also with its sequels. At the moment of making this video, I am currently reading the third book, Children of Dune, and already got the fourth volume ready to continue this epic saga once I finish. If by any chance the concepts I mentioned about this book remotely piqued your interest, then I highly suggest you to consider giving it a read. I will say that it's not the easiest book to pick up, and its writing is definitely not for everybody, especially with all the unique words in it like Gum Jabbar. But once you get the hang of things, it's a very intriguing narrative that constantly shifts from the perspective of different characters, and its story is rather unpredictable. If you decide to pick up Dune, you don't have to worry about buying and reading the entire series, for the first book actually has a nice self-containing story and a fulfilling ending. And the sequels take place many years afterwards, showing you more of how the universe has changed thanks to the accomplishments led by Paul. I know there was a movie released around 1984, but let's say it hasn't held up as good as other films from the same era. and I still recommend the book a lot more than this. But there's also a remake or reimagining of the movie coming sometime soon, but honestly I can't tell you anything about the quality. Dune is just such a unique story that I find it difficult to compress into a single film, if I'm being honest. There are also a few series on TV that I hear are actually quite decent that I have yet to watch myself. I know it's filled with that early 2000s TV style, but from the looks of reviews online, it does seem to do the book justice, and it's an overall solid series as a whole. In the end, while it's not confirmed whether or not Dune had a direct impact into any of the Metroid games, I still find it fascinating how the elements from this book from 1965 still find some relevancy in shaping a lot of our modern science fiction, and truly shows how determined someone like Frank Herbert was to make their universe truly feel alive and immersible. But I also think there's an important lesson that we can take from this from the perspective of the creative world. And that's the importance of spending time to flesh out the relationship between our characters and the worlds they inhabit, to truly tap into the potential our stories might provide by giving our audience a more sympathetic perspective to the stories we're trying to tell. Something I feel the Metroid games have managed to perfect over the years, and it's one of the many reasons why we consider it so special in our hearts to this day.
Hey Darksiders, how's it going? You got any more of that spice melange left? I need it for my mac and cheese! Yay!